In today's video, we're going to be exploring the Layer 2 implementation of ACI using the new 1.2 version of APIC code. We are actually going to be doing an extension of the EPG. There's two methods to extend Layer 2 in ACI. We can either use the EPG method or we can extend the entire bridge domain. For the purposes of this recording, we are only going to be extending the EPG out to a Layer 2 interface. So if we look at the topology of our ACI fabric, again we're going to look at this switch on the left hand side. So these two leaf switches that I'm kind of circling here make up our VPC pair. We actually have a port channel down on the Nexus 3172 switch, and these two leaf switches are going to become VPC peers. And again, we're going to create a VPC down to this Nexus 3172. We have created VLAN interfaces and VRFs down on the 3172. So again, we can show secure Layer 2 multi-tenancy from each one of the students' tenants down to a VLAN interface that's assigned to a VRF. So now we're going to move on to the configuration part of this video. In order to do that, we're going to use the Quick Start wizard to create our VPC. So what we want to do is we want to go to Fabric, Access Policies, and then Quick Start. And we look down, we see we have the Configure an Interface, Port Channel, or VPC. We're going to click on that to start the wizard. And if we notice, there's already a VPC configured. Inside the lab guide, we show the 3 steps that are required to configure this. Because this environment is shared by multiple classes, it was decided that we would not do this for a class exercise, but rather leave it pre-configured. The steps are in the lab guide for future reference if you want to go and configure the VPC configuration, but for this purpose of this video, we are not going to show that. So what we want to do to start the wizard is to click on the green arrow, and what we're going to do is we're going to use the quick method, and we're going to choose the switches that we're going to configure the VPC peers on. So again, we're going to be using switch ID 105 and 106, which is leaf 3 and 4. I showed those leafs earlier in the topology video on the left hand side. So those guys are going to be become our VPC peers, and we're going to create the port channel from those two switches down to the 3172. We are going to name the switch profile class 1 because we are working with class 1. So it's going to be class 1 underscore VPC underscore switch profile. Next, we're going to click on the plus sign to further configure the wizard. We're going to click on VPC, and in this particular case, using the table, we're going to use interface 1/1. The switch interface selector name is going to be switch 105-106 underscore IF selector class 1. So we're going to get rid of that, paste that in. We're going to allow the wizard to create our interface policy group. So it's going to be a 10 gig link, CDP enabled, LLDP enabled, and we want to make sure that we click on this port channel policy. So one thing that's very important is we want to make sure our attached device type is bare metal. So we're going to click that. And then finally, we're going to have to create the domain and the VLANs that we're going to extend out. So our domain name is going to be class 1 underscore VPC underscore 201. And the VLANs that we're going to actually extend out for this class is 41, 42, 43, 44, 45, and 46. So we're going to click Save, click Save again, and then finally Submit. So what we want to do is we want to take a look at physical domains, make sure that was created. So here we see the VPCs, and again we have class 1, 2, and 3 VPCs as well as the layer 2 ones from created earlier. We want to look at the VLAN pools that were created by the wizard, and again we have the class 1 and 2 and 3 VLAN pools. Look in the global policies, we want to look at the AEPs. So again we have the class 1, 2, and 3 attachable entity profiles. Inside of the interface policies we'll see the interface selectors, class 1, 2, and 3 VPC interface selectors, and then finally the policy groups where we actually define 10 gig CDP and LLDP. It's going to be right here in the switch 105, 106 interface selectors. Now that the instructor has completed the steps to create the VPC using the VPC wizard, we're going to actually go into our tenant, and in our case it's going to be tenant S1, and we're going to remove the mapping that we created earlier for our layer 2 lab. So again we want to go into the VApp. It's going to bring up our drag and drop GUI. We want to make it, move it around, make it look a little nice. And what we're going to do is we're going to double click on this bare metal icon. That's going to bring up our physical domain GUI interface. Now what we want to do on this is we want to remove this physical domain from the this bare metal. So we're going to click on it and we're going to click an X to remove. Click yes. Then we are going to click plus to add the VPC domain. We're going to choose class 1 because we are in class 1. We're going to look for the path, and again we have to be really careful on this one because this looks really familiar when you go to scroll down. So basically we're going to look for the one that says node 105-106 / switch 105.106 _ IF selector class 1 policy group. Click on that, and then if we go back into the table we're going to see that we're going to be using encapsulation VLAN 41 for class 1. So we're going to type in VLAN-41 for the encapsulation for student 1. Click update, click closed, and at the very bottom click submit. Now if we hadn't done it previously we would actually go into our EPG for the web and change this over to flood, but since we did this in the previous lab it's already set to flooding. If you're doing this and you're just doing the VPC lab, you do need to change this from the bridge domain 1 over to flood, but in our case we've already done that, so we're just going to leave it alone. The final portion of this lab will be to actually go in and verify connectivity. If we go in and we had previously set up a ping to 10.1.1.100, which was the layer 2 extension without the VPC, we see that since we removed the physical domain and the path and the VLAN encapsulation, we can no longer ping that. Now we should be able to ping 10.1.1.200, which is going to be the extension of VLAN 41 via the VPC down to the switch in student 1's VRF. And we are able to ping that, so that concludes this test.